sign of the eternal self, the mighty kingdoms of the deathless Faust, aspired to reach the being's absolutes out of the sorrow and darkness of the world, out of the depths where life and thought are torn, lonely mounts up to heaven, the deathless flame.
Good morning. We're reading in Book 2, Canto 12. We've come to page 280 at line 125. We're following King Aswapati's journey through the inner planes of consciousness, and he's approaching the end of his journey. We have just a few cantos remaining. And he's gone through the kingdoms of subtle matter, the kingdoms of life, the vital worlds. He's descended into the hells of that region, as well as the life paradises, the heavens. And then he went through the worlds of the mind, first at the human levels of mind, those levels that we're familiar with, but in these realms of the subtle worlds that cast their influences here on our world. And from there he moved upwards into the kingdoms of the greater mind. And these were high levels of the spiritual mind, the spiritual consciousness. And in the canto that we're reading now, Canto 12, in the heavens of the ideal, he sees a whole series of worlds climbing up towards some ideal height. And he sees these worlds as if arrayed in a series of steps, a stairway leading upwards. And on either side of that stairway, he sees on one side the kingdoms of the deathless rose, and on the other, the kingdoms of the deathless flame. And these, as I was saying last time, I think represent something of the psychic worlds or of the psychic influences that come to us, with which our own psychic being has a direct connection. And on one side, the experience is one of delight and beauty and love and self-giving. And on the other side is this deathless flame, this fire of aspiration, perhaps of the god Agni, this flame that strives to realize the heights of the divine. So we're coming to the end of his description of these kingdoms of the deathless flame, and we'll just continue from there. Perhaps Suresh, would you like to read on line 125, page 280?
Far from our eager beach, go summit hill, to rock with for our mortal strength and height. Hardly in that excessive joy of toil, bring by the spirits, yet a great will, clusters, intolerant, climb from us, therefore to roasting for our mortal and our heart cannot clear, do not our flesh support. Only the eternal saintness can dare to attempt the immense adventure of that flame and the sacrifice of all the perished here. Our human knowledge is a tender pearl on a young water to a sun was to manufacture their force from the begin years. Appears good and remember for good, passionate and needed being staying with them. His energy stumbles towards a restless force, and imperfection of our highest strength, fortunes and their perfection are our share. Happy the ones that have not felt our fall. There is one with truth and good for in force, not by exploits. Indians, they it was natural birth of nothingness. Is their strongness, sweet intensities. There is his great, transparent, never set, and there is urgent opportunity of peace, to which mortal matters out that watch. Yes, and shares of divinity.
Thank you. So Sri Aurobindo has been describing these worlds of the deathless flame, and he had described them just up above towards the top of the page of 280. Homes of unfallen and illumined might, heavens of unchanging good, pure and unborn, heights of the grandeur of truth's ageless ray. As in a symbol sky, they start to view and call our souls into a vaster air. So in this passage Suresh has just read, he says, far from our eager reach, those summits live, too lofty for our mortal strength and height. Hardly in a dire ecstasy of toil, climbed by the spirit's naked athlete will. So these realms are very difficult for us to ascend to. Hardly can we do that with a great tapasya, a great discipline of yoga. He says, austere, intolerant, they claim from us efforts too lasting for our mortal nerve. Our hearts cannot cleave to, nor our flesh support. And then only the eternal strength in us can dare to attempt the immense adventure of that climb and the sacrifice of all we cherish here. But fortunately, we have something from those realms within us, this psychic being, this eternal strength, some flame from this realm, and also this self-sacrifice from the other side of the stairs, the kingdoms of the deathless rose. Because we have to leave behind all that we are here, all that we cherish in life, to climb those heights. And then he contrasts that realm with our own earthly attempts. He says, our human knowledge is a candle burnt on a dim altar to a sun-vast truth. And man's virtue, a coarse-spun, ill-fitting dress, apparels wooden images of good, passionate and blinded, bleeding, stained with mire. His energy stumbles towards a deathless force. And imperfection dogs our highest strength. Portions and pale reflections are our share. So he contrasts those worlds with ours. There, where will is one with truth and good with power. Impoverished not by earth mind's indigence, they keep God's natural breath of mightiness, his spare, spontaneous, swift intensities. And there is his great transparent mirror, self, which just reflects all that is purely, truly. And there, his sovereign autarky of bliss, in which immortal natures have their part, heirs and co-sharers of divinity. So we continue, Debashish.
He, through the ideal's kingdoms, moved at will, accepted their beauty and their greatness bore, partook of the glories of their wonder fields, but passed on nor stayed beneath their splendor's rule. All there was an intense but partial light. In each a seraph-winged, high-browed idea united all knowledge by one master thought, persuaded all action to one golden sense, all powers subjected to a single power, and made a world where it could reign alone, an absolute ideal's perfect home. Insignia of their victory and their faith, they offered to the traveler at their gates a quenchless flame or an unfading flower, emblem of a high kingdom's privilege. A glorious shining angel of the way, presented to the seeking of the soul, the sweetness and the might of an idea, each deemed truth's intimate fount and summit force, the heart of the meaning of the universe, perfection's key, passport to paradise.
Thank you. So anyone who's come late, we're on page 281. So we see, even though these realms are far, very difficult for human natures to reach, King Aswapati is able to move through these kingdoms at will. He accepted their beauty and their greatness bore, partook of the glories of their wonder fields. But then he says, but passed nor stayed beneath their splendor's rule. So he didn't stop there. There was still some sense of inadequacy that he felt in these realms. And then he explains what that was. All there was an intense but partial light. In each seraph-winged, high-browed idea, united all knowledge by one master thought. So we see that each of these kingdoms is mastered by one thought, by one aspect of the reality. So they're ideal, they're perfect in the light of that particular idea. They express it perfectly, but they're not integral. It's not a rounded vision of reality that takes all different perspectives into its scope. It persuaded all action to one golden sense, all powers subjected to a single power, and made a world where it could reign alone, an absolute ideal's perfect home. And then he says, they offered to the traveler passing through those realms a quenchless flame or an unfading flower. That's the deathless flame or the deathless rose. And these are, in a sense, two great powers by which we can ascend to the realms of the divine, through love, through self-giving, through a complete surrender of all we have and are, or through this intense aspiration to reach the divine, an intense, austere self-discipline. So these kingdoms offered to the traveler an emblem of one of these ways. And each of these different realms presented itself as the one truth, the greatest ideal. But yet it was only one partial aspect of it. So we'll continue. Sudanya.
Yet for their reasons were these absolutes met, and made a circle of bliss with mild hands. Light stood embraced by light, fire waited fire. But none in the other world his body lose, to find his soul in the world's single soul, a multiplied raptures of infinity. Onward he passed to a diviner sphere, there joined in a common greatness, light and bliss. All high and beautiful and desirable powers, forgetting their difference and their separate reign, become a single multitudinous whole, above the parting of the roads of time, above the silence and its thousandfold world, in the immutable and inviolate truth, forever united and inseparable. The radiant children of eternity dwell on the widespread height where all are one.
Thank you. So Aswapati finds some regions where these separate truths combine, join, made a circle of bliss with married hands. Light stood embraced by light, fire wedded fire. But he says, but none in the other would his body lose, to find his soul in the world's single soul, a multiplied rapture of infinity. So there was a combination of powers joining together, but not still an absolute oneness. But then he seems that he even goes higher into a realm where there is this oneness. So it says, onward he passed to a diviner sphere. There, joined in a common greatness, light and bliss, all high and beautiful and desirable powers, forgetting their difference and their separate reign, become a single multitudinous whole. Above the parting of the roads of time, above the silence and its thousandfold word, in the immutable and inviolate truth, forever united and inseparable, the radiant children of eternity dwell on the wide spirit height where all are one. So he comes into a realm where there is a oneness underlying everything, but still this multitudinous whole, this diversity of experience and expression, but there's an absolute sense of the oneness supporting that. So that's the summit of the heavens of the ideal. Perhaps. Sometimes he will describe supermind in that way. But it could also be, I think, the worlds of Satchidananda. There too, there would be a oneness underlying. And still, these are worlds, there are worlds of Satchidananda where there is an expression, a manifestation, a multitudinous whole, let's say. So it could be that too, I don't know.
No, Satchidananda is usually pure existence, this consciousness. And usually when creation and manifestation starts, that's where the diversity aspect, still the physical world starts.
Yes.
That's what my understanding from the other.
Yeah. My understanding is, there's a truth to that. There is something, and that's how its experience may be. But he also speaks of these worlds of Sat, of Chit, and Ananda.
Yes.
There's if it's a world, there's a manifestation, no? So it's not only the unmanifest. There is also a manifestation.
Beginning of creation starts from the supermind, the Mahashakti mind. And this heavens of the ideal, this is the layers of already the whole mind. There is such a level, but it's not in this context.
Yeah. Supermind is in a way the power of Satchidananda to manifest. So it's united also with Satchidananda. So now we will continue Asupati's journey into the self of mind. Here he enters into a oneness which is very much like what Nitya was just describing, a kind of an unmanifest oneness, a oneness of experience where all is known.
Can you describe that transition out of this ideal into that? Because it seems like there's a turn in the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that he's pointing, he talks about these heavens of the ideal as worlds also that their peaks are pointing to something beyond. And so what that beyond is may be something like Supermind or Satchita, these worlds of Satchitananda. So they're pointing to something beyond. And so then he leaves it there. He doesn't go into it at that point. He's not really entering into those higher realms yet. He's going to do that a little bit later. And but for now, he just describes that there were some higher worlds there. But now he's going to enter into another kind of experience, which is kind of a little bit of a shift away from what he has been describing. So it's a little bit of a separate realm. So we'll see. He comes into a place where everything just kind of falls into silence. And there is no more of this movement and cry, or if it is, there's something standing back from it. And he's going into that silence, standing back. So we'll read through this next canto all the way through, and then we'll go back and look at it in more detail. So, sir, would you like to begin? Okay.
Canto 13, in the self of mind. At last there came a bare, indifferent sky, where silence listened to the cosmic voice, but answered nothing to a million calls. The soul's endless question met with no response. An abrupt conclusion ended eager hopes. A deep cessation in a mighty calm, a finish line on the last page of a thought, and a margin and a blank of wordless peace. There paused the climbing hierarchy of worlds. He stood on a wide arc of summit space, alone with an enormous self of mind, which held all life in a corner of its vast, omnipotent, immobile, and aloof. In the world which sprang from it, it took no part, it gave no heed to the pains of victory. It was indifferent to its own defeats. It heard the cry of grief and made no sign. Impartial failed its gaze on evil and good. It saw destruction come and did not move.
Thank you. Would you read?
An equal cause of things, a lonely seer, and master of its multitude of forms. It acted not, but bore all thoughts and deeds, the witness Lord of nature's myriad acts, consenting to the movements of her force. His mind reflected this vast quietism, This witness hush is the thinker's secret base. Hidden in silent depth, the word is formed. From hidden silence, the act is born. Into the voiceful mind, the laboring world, in secrecy wraps the seed, the eternal sows. Silence, the mystic birthplace of the soul. In God's supreme, withdrawn and timeless hush, a seeing self and potent energy met. The silence knew itself, and thought took form. Self-made from the dual power creation rose.
Thank you. Let's pause. Oh, we'll continue reading.
In the still self he lived, and it in him, its mute, immemorable listening depths, its vastness and its stillness were his own. One being, with it he grew wide, powerful, free, apart, unbound. He looked on all the things done, as one who builds his own imagined scenes, and loses not himself in what he sees. Spectator of a drama self-conceived, he looked on the world and watched its motive thoughts, with the burden of luminous prophecy in their eyes. It forces with their feet of wind and fire, arisen from the dumbness in his soul. All now he seemed to understand and know. Desire came not, nor any gust of will. The great, perturbed inquirer lost his task. Nothing was asked nor wanted any more. There he could stay, the self, a silence one. His soul had peace, it knew the cosmic whole.
Thank you. Margaret?
Then suddenly a luminous finger fell on all things seen, or touched, or heard, or felt, and showed his mind that nothing could be known, that must be reached, from which all knowledge comes. The skeptic ray disrupted all that seems, and smote at the very roots of thought and sense. In a universe of nescience they have grown, aspiring towards a superconscious sun, playing in shine and rain from heavenlier skies. They never can win, however high they reach, or overpass, however keen their probe. A doubt corroded even the means to think. Distrust was thrown upon mind's instruments. All that it takes for reality's shining coin, proved fact, fixed inference, deducted clear, firm theory, assured significance, appeared as frauds upon time's credit bank, or assets valueless in truth's treasury.
Thank you. Nitya?
And ignorance on an uneasy throne, travestied with a fortuitous sovereignty, a figure of knowledge garbed in dubious words, and tinsel thought forms brightly inadequate. A laborer in the dark, dazzled by half-light. What it knew was an image in a broken glass. What it saw was real, but its sight untrue. All the ideas in its vast repertory were like the mutterings of a transient cloud that spent itself in sound and left no trace. A frail house hanging in uncertain air, the thin ingenious web around which it moves, put out a while on the tree of the universe, and gathered up into itself again, was only a trap to catch life's insect food, winged thoughts that flutter fragile in brief light, but dead once captured in fixed forms of mind, aims puny but looming large in man's small scale, flickers of imagination's brilliant gauze, and cobweb-wrapped beliefs alive no more.
Thank you. Would you like to read?
The magic hut of built-up certitudes, made out of glittering dust and bright moonshine, in which it shrines its image of the real, collapsed into the nescience whence it rose. Only a gleam was there of simple facts that shroud the mystery lurking in their glow, and falsehoods based on hidden realities by which they live until they fall from time. Our mind is a house haunted by the slain past, ideas soon mummified, ghosts of old truths, God's spontaneities tied with formal strings and packed into drawers of reason's trim bureau. A grave of great lost opportunities, or an office for misuse of soul and life, and all the waste man makes of heaven's gifts, and all his squanderings of nature's store, a stage for the comedy of ignorance.
Thank you. Next.
The world seemed a long aeonic failure scene, all sterile gloom, no base was left secure. Assailed by the edge of the convicting beam, the builder reason lost her confidence in the successful slide and turn of thought that makes the soul the prisoner of a phrase. Its highest wisdom was a brilliant guess, its mighty structured science of the worlds, a passing light on being's surfaces. There was nothing there but a schema drawn by sense, a substitute for eternal mysteries, a scroll figure of reality, a plan, an elevation by the architect word, imposed upon the semblances of time. Existence self was shadowed by a doubt. Almost it seemed a lotus leaf afloat on a nude pool of cosmic nothingness.
Thank you.
This great spectator and creator mind was only some half-seeing delegate, a veil that hung between the soul and light, an idol, not the living body of God. Even the still spirit that looks upon its works was some pale front of the unknowable, A shadow seemed the wide and witness self, its liberation and immobile calm, a void recoil of being from time-made things, not the self-vision of eternity. Deep peace was there, but not the nameless force. Our sweet and mighty Mother was not there, who gathers in her bosom her children's lives, her clasp that takes the world into her arms. In the fathomless rapture of the infinite, the bliss that is creation's splendid grain, or the white passion of God ecstasy that laughs in the blaze of the boundless heart of love. A greater spirit than the self of mind must answer to the questioning of his soul. For here was no firm clue and no sure road. High climbing pathways ceased in the unknown. An artist's sight constructed the beyond in contrary patterns and conflicting hues. A part experience fragmented the whole.
Thank you.
He looked above, but all was blank and still. A sapphire firmament of abstract thought escaped into a formless vacancy. He looked below, but all was dark and mute. A noise was heard, between of thought and prayer, a strife, a labor without end or pause. A vain and ignorant seeking raised its voice, a rumor and a movement and a call, a foaming mass, a cry innumerable, rolled over up in the ocean surge of life, along the coasts of mortal ignorance. On its unstable and enormous breast, beings and forces, forms, ideas like waves, jostled for figure and supremacy, and rose again in time, and at the bottom of the sleepless star, a nothingness parent of the struggling worlds, a huge creator death, a mystic void, forever sustaining the irrational cry, forever excluding the supernal word, motionless, refusing question and response, reposed beneath the voices and the march, the dim inconscience, dumb incertitude. Two firmaments of darkness and of light opposed their limits to the Spirit's work. It moved veiled in form, self's infinity, in a world of beings and momentary events, where all must die to live and live to die. Immortal by renewed mortality, it wandered in the spiral of its acts or ran around the cycles of its thought, yet was no more than its original self, and knew no more than when it first began. To be was a prison, extinction the escape.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to the beginning of the canto. I'll just comment that, it's the self of mind and it's this kind of pure silence, but the imagery that he uses here, it's so beautiful and expressive of this realm and its contrasts with our life. Really beautiful poetry, I thought. So we continue.
At last there came a bare, indifferent sky, where silence listened to the cosmic voice, but answered nothing to a million calls. The soul's endless question met with no response. An abrupt conclusion ended eager hopes. A deep cessation in a mighty calm, a finish line on the last page of thought, and a margin and a blank of wordless peace. There paused the climbing hierarchy of worlds. He stood on a wide arc of space, alone with an enormous self of mind, which held all life in a corner of its vast, omnipotent, immobile, and aloof. In the world which sprang from it, it took no part, it gave no heed to the paeans of victory. It was indifferent to its own defects, defeats. It heard the cry of grief and made no sign. Impartial will it gaze on evil and good. It saw destruction came and did not move.
Thank you. Aswapati has been ascending through all of these planes of consciousness, down from the worlds of subtle matter, all the way up to the heavens of the ideal that we're climbing up even higher and pointing to some realm above. And now he comes, all of a sudden, he seems to come to the end of the line. And he just comes into this realm of silence, of void, of emptiness. Silence listened to the cosmic voice, but answered nothing to its million calls. So it's as if there's all this movement there that it is able to witness, to see, but it stands apart from it. It doesn't enter into that confusion, all of that noise, all of that movement. It stands apart. And abrupt conclusion ended eager hopes. A deep cessation in a mighty calm. A finish line on the last page of thought. Like at the end of a book, sometimes they'll say, the end. So he's kind of come to the end.
For me, it's interesting now that the soul has endless
Yeah, the soul is always seeking for something, for some fulfillment. It's always striving. At least those kingdoms of the deathless flame are always searching, striving for something, some answer. But here it just comes into a wordless silence, ended all questioning.
Using that imagery of the path and the pilgrimage, he got up to the top of the mountain. So he's up, but he's still climbing. But now he's climbing into this deathless space. So all that, so he didn't see, earlier we were talking about he changed, but I don't think it's still going up.
Oh, he's still climbing.
He's passing these peaks into this, but the mind can't go that far. So then he has to go through this next step. But he's not going down.
No. Yeah, it's maybe like that. He's come into this kind of summit realm where...
Because he's standing there, he stood on the arc of the top and moved down.
Yeah.
He sees all this.
So it's as if also he's looking upon all of the creation, the manifestation. He sees it from this height, but he makes no response to it. So, Debashish, you continue.
Line number 20, right?
An equal cause of things.
An equal cause of things, a lonely seer, and master of its multitude of forms. It acted not, but bore all thoughts and deeds. The witness lord of nature's myriad acts, consenting to the movements of her force. His mind reflected this vast quietism. This witness hush is the thinker's secret base. Hidden in silent depths, the word is formed. From hidden silences, the act is born. Into the voiceful mind, the laboring world. In secrecy, wraps the seed the eternal sows. Silence, the mystic birthplace of the soul. In God's supreme, withdrawn and timeless hush, a seeing self and potent energy met. The silence knew itself and thought took form. Self-made from the dual power, creation rose.
Thank you. There's almost a little bit of a transition to a kind of subjective stance. It's before he was kind of describing standing on this summit and overlooking the worlds. But here he speaks of kind of a subjective experience of a part of the mind looking out at things, and also a kind of a subjective silence from which all thought, all creation issue from that silence. It's the equal cause of things, a lonely seer and master of its multitude of forms. So it's a consciousness, the silent consciousness, which is the cause of things and also the master of things. But he calls it the witness Lord of nature's myriad acts. It's the Lord, but it's allowing nature just to act, and it doesn't involve itself, it just witnesses it impartially, consenting to the movements of her force. His mind reflected this vast quietism. This witness hush is the thinker's secret base. Hidden in silent depths, the word is formed. You can even imagine Sri Aurobindo kind of stationed in that silence and waiting for these words to come into the voiceful mind, the laboring world. In secrecy wraps the seed the eternal sows, silence, the mystic birthplace of the soul. In God's supreme, withdrawn, and timeless hush, a seeing self and potent energy met. The silence knew itself, and thought took form. Self made from the dual power creation rose. Seems like he's speaking of Purusha Prakriti or Ishwara Shakti here.
It seems to be the source of the creation.
Yeah.
So, how the word becomes flesh.
Conscious being and the conscious force.
For me, this light is expressed on the silence. Thought is created. The soul is created and acting is created.
Everything comes out of that silence. So we continue. Would you read? In the still self.
In the still self, he lived, and it in him. Its mute, immemorable, listening depths, its vastness and its stillness were his own. One being, with it he grew wide, powerful, free, Apart, unbound, he looked on all things done, as one who builds his own imagined scenes and loses not himself in what he sees, spectator of a drama self-conceived. He looked on the world and watched its motive thoughts with the burden of luminous prophecy in their eyes, its forces with their feet of wind and fire, arisen from the dumbness in his soul. All now he seemed to understand and knows. Desire came not, nor any gust of will. The great, perturbed enquirer lost his task. Nothing was asked nor wanted any more. There he could stay, the self, the silence won. Its soul had peace. It knew the cosmic whole.
Thank you. We see here in his description of the self that it's not just emptiness. There's also, from this silence, from this witness consciousness, all the movement takes place, all the action of thought and feeling. It issues out of that. But he says, as one who builds his own imagined scenes and loses not himself in what he sees, spectator of a drama, self-conceived. He looked on the world and watched its motive thoughts with the burden of luminous prophecy in their eyes, its forces. So he's observing all of this coming out from his being. But at the same time, he has this freedom because he doesn't identify with all of this movement, all these thoughts and feelings. He stands back and he's absolutely free from all of that, from all of its defects, its limitations. Now he seemed to understand and know. There's a sense of, I think, fulfillment that he has as well. Desire came not, nor any gust of will. Nothing was asked nor wanted anymore. There he could stay, the self, the silence, one. His soul had peace. It knew the cosmic whole. Seems as if he lives in this oneness, perhaps a vision of the cosmic whole.
Do you feel this play of the duality also, because there is the oneness, there's also the self and the silence, the display. So there is the non-duality, but the duality at the same time.
Mm. There's, I don't know, the non-duality is both combined, right? So it seems to me that that non-duality can only be in kind of the supramental knowledge, which embraces both. Otherwise, one can be in a oneness, but it's either kind of an unmanifest oneness, where there is no difference, where there is nothing, no movement, just silence. So one can kind of depart into that. One may not even see the movement. Here he sees both. One can depart in that oneness and emptiness. One can go into that, leaving behind. But then the world doesn't end, it continues, but you're no longer looking at it.
It seems like we need a quantum theory to understand that.
Well, we have. The supermind is the quantum.
That's the same thing, I think.
And for that, you have to go into matter. So we'll continue. Margaret?
Then suddenly a luminous finger fell on all things seen, or touched, or heard, or felt, and showed his mind that nothing could be known. That must be reached from which all knowledge comes. The skeptic ray disrupted all that seems, and smote at the very roots of thought and sense. In a universe of nescience they have grown, aspiring towards a superconscious sun, playing in shine and rain from heavier skies. They never can win, however high they reach, or overpass, however keen their probe. A doubt corroded even the means to think. Distrust was thrown upon mind's instruments. All that it takes for reality's shining coin, proved fact, fixed inference, deduction, clear, firm theory, assured significance, appeared as frauds upon time's credit bank, or assets valueless in truth's treasury.
Thank you. So it seems as if he was living in that witness self, silent, looking upon the creation, the world, but not taking part in its movement, just observing it dispassionately. But then something comes, an experience comes, in a sense of the unreality of it all. That before he seemed to have a understanding and knowledge of that creation, but now a doubt enters into that, and he feels that all of this cannot be known. So suddenly a luminous finger fell on all things seen or touched or heard or felt, and showed his mind that nothing could be known. That must be reached from which all knowledge comes. So at his present station of consciousness, he realizes that he doesn't know what he is sensing, this world around, which he's observing. The skeptic ray disrupted all that seems and smote at the very roots of thought and sense. A doubt corroded even the means to think. Distrust was thrown upon mind's instruments, all that it takes for reality's shining coin. And then he describes, so this is the typical action of mind, our knowledge, proved fact, fixed inference, deduction, clear, firm theory, assured significance, appeared as frauds upon time's credit bank. Because with time, in the end, they all turn out to be false, valueless, or assets, valueless in truth's treasury.
But in all this, he puts that one line that everything is aspiring toward the superconscious self. So he doesn't go completely into nihilistic.
Right. Yeah. But this sense of unreality is there, but he knows somehow there is a place where it is known, the truth can be known.
Because that unreality is also the way it is, that's the mind. That the sense world is self-conceived.
Yeah, and now he will describe that experience of the unreality. These are all experiences that Sri Aurobindo also went through, and there's a beautiful little pamphlet that Shraddhavan has prepared about Sri Aurobindo's first major spiritual experience, which I think relates some of this, where he enters into the silence and then experiences that everything appears as unreal, kind of just ephemeral, passing without substance. And he describes that experience here. But I think for today we'll stop here and we'll go into that description next time.
the silent one. His soul had been. It knew the cosmic whole. Then suddenly a luminous finger fell on all things seen or touched or heard or felt, and showed his mind that nothing could be known, that must be reached, from which all knowledge comes. The skeptic ray disrupted all that seemed, and smote at the very roots of thought and sense.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.